everybody, I'm Marley Bird, and I hope this video finds you in good health and good spirits. This is video 2 of the Tournament of Stitches 2020 Mystery Make-Along. By this point in the project, you should have completed your section 1 and you're ready to begin section 2. If you have not started yet, it's okay. It is not too late to join in the fun. It's never too late to join in the fun. Simply click on the link in the video description box right down there below, and that will take you to the main page where you will find a link to each one of the sections we will be working on throughout this entire project. You'll have to scroll all the way to the end of the page. I promise it is there. While you are down there getting that link though, why don't you guys go ahead and, you know the drill, smash that like button for me so that other people know you enjoyed this video, and it lets me know that you're participating in this really great Tournament of Stitches project. Why don't we jump in by taking a look at what our homework was? By this point in the project, you should have a piece that looks a little something like this. You don't have this section yet. That's the part we're going to work on today, but I've jumped ahead so that you don't have to watch me just knitting so many rows of just plain knitting. But this right here is what you finished after section 1. Congratulations. You've done some really great slip stitch mosaic knitting. The entire project uses this really fun technique, so it's one that you're going to become very familiar with. We have painstakingly drawn out many different motifs or mosaic motifs for this entire project. I am excited to walk you through each and every one. I promise as you finish them along the way, you will not be able to wait until the next one is released to see how this scarf or infinity cowl works up together. We're going to have a lot of fun. So as I mentioned, this is what we finished, and if we take a look at the chart from the first section, this is what the chart looks like. See the dark gray on here? That is represented by the dark gray in my actual sample. Pretty cool. Hopefully yours looks something similar to that. And in today, we're going to do an entirely new motif. Let's take a look at the chart. Right down here, you can see the chart for today's motif. It is something fun. It has sort of stair steps. My contractors or my testers, they called it the steppin' up motif because it looks like it's stair steps with these long lines that go together with it. I love the connection of this look of the motif with the one previously. So I think it's a great transition in style of the look of the motif itself. We will follow along with the chart here in the video, but just like before, I do have the written instructions in the pattern link below. So when you click that pattern link, it will take you to the main post. Scroll down for, if you're watching this section, this would be section 2. Scroll down for section 2, click on that link, and that will take you to the full instructions for section 2, including this chart and the written instructions. We're going to follow along with this chart, and as I mentioned already, I have gone ahead and I have used my color A, and I've worked up in garter stitch, just plain garter stitch, 10 rows. And I used my smaller pair. Let me try to say that again. I did use my I did use my smaller pair of needles for this section, and when I changed to my color B for row 11 and row 12, okay? So when I start here with row 13, I'm going to be transitioning to my larger needle again because the mosaic section tends to be a little bit more snug than the plain garter stitch section. So we go up a needle size there, and it allows us to get the same gauge in both sections. And we will begin on row 13. And just like in section 1, we will read from right to left down the row, and then on row 14, we'll go from left to right down the row. Just as before, the gray represents our color C, the white represents our color B. So remember that. And just like before, if we're looking at the first stitch of the row or the first stitch of the row over here, that lets you know what color you should be using on that row. So we change colors every 2 rows, right? Every time you get back over here where the yarn is hanging out waiting for you, you'll change colors and you'll go down with 13 with color C, come back with color C on row 14, and then on row 15, you change to color B again, okay? That allows us to transition the colors up the way so we don't have to cut the yarn. Speaking of cutting the yarn, you'll notice in the written instructions after section 1, I did list that if you wanted to be proactive, this is a very good time to weave in your ends or bury your ends. I do have an instructional video on that. I linked to the pattern itself. I'll also put a link in the I button. Would it be over there or over there? I can't ever remember where the I button is. I'll put a link in the I button. I'll also put it in the video description box of this video, where you can watch a video I did with my friend Ann Burke showing you how to bury your ends. It makes it super easy, and it just will be very convenient for you to do that along the way as you finish each section. That way you don't have to wait till the very end to do it. Okay, so that's enough talking. Let's jump into our knitting here, okay? So I'm going to move this chart out of the way. You should have yours in front of you. For those of you who don't know, if you click on the image on my website of the chart, it should take you to the media page, and you should be able to print that chart directly from the media page, so you would get a bigger image. So you could do that should you choose. As I mentioned, I have worked through 1 through 10 and 11 and 12. I'm getting ready to start 13, and I have my larger pair of needles here. I need to also tie on my gray color. Now, somebody asked me in the Facebook group why I tie on my color. And the reason I always tie on my color when I'm changing colors at the end of the row, or even if I'm changing to a new ball of yarn, I always just do a basic overhand knot, just not even knot, it's just tying. I'm just tying it on directly onto the old yarn or the old color. I like the way that just that little tie just holds my yarn in place as I start working with it. I find it easier to work that way. That's why I do it. And when I went back and wove in all my ends, I undid that knot and then wove in my ends. I don't like knots in my knitting, so I did not keep the knot there. All right, so that's why I add that in there. Let's grab my other needle here, and we begin with row 13. So I will knit 1, and we immediately go to a slip. Remember, the slip is the yarn in back, so it's in back of our work because this is the front of our piece. I go into the stitch as if to purl, and I slip it off. I knit the next stitch, slip the following stitch. Now I have to knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I will knit 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'll slip 1, knit 1, slip 1. I want to make sure I'm not letting those get too close together. Remember, we want to make sure those are nice and spaced out, nice and even. And now I have to knit 5. 1, whoops, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. Pull my yarn. My yarn is starting to creep up on me a little bit here. Okay, so I knit 5, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 5. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Almost there to the end. Slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit to the end, which is knit 6. All right, so I'm done with this needle. I can set this aside. I won't need it again until the end of this section. Okay, so this is where I am on this side. I'm going to turn my work, and this will be the first chance you get to look at the back side of my previous section as well because I didn't turn it earlier, but this is what my previous section looks like. Notice I do have those longer floats in those areas that we did those long slip stitches. Later on, if you want to tack those down with some like invisible thread, you could do that, but I found that once I have this wash and blocked, those don't really ever get in my way. Like they're really not so bad. This is not like Fair Isle, so there was no way for us to really tuck those in without pulling to the side stitches that they're connected to. So it's really nice if they look just like that. Okay. On our way back here, we are going to follow our chart. Row 14, we follow it all the way back in this direction. Or if you don't want to look at the chart, this is the perfect time for you to get used to reading your knitting. We are knitting with our color C. So whenever you see your color C on the needle, you knit it. When you see your color B on the needle, you will slip it, making sure that the yarn is in front. So it's towards you. So that way the float is on the wrong side of the fabric. So let's pick up our work here. And I am not going to look at my chart. I'm going to read my knitting because it's much easier to just read my knitting here. And I'm keeping everything in garter stitch, so everything is just knit. I'm not going to purl anything. I do have to be careful though, because I get in a habit of wanting to purl right after I slip that stitch because I have to move my yarn to the front just like when I purl. So I have to remind myself, make sure I move my yarn back to the back so I can knit. And I just get cruising along here. Make sure everything is still nice and relaxed. I just love this. This is a very relaxing project for me because I don't have to stay super focused all the time, right? Like on these wrong side rows, yeah, I have to focus to pay attention to what color I'm knitting or slipping, but I don't have to really pay super close attention to the chart, right? I just have to read my knitting. So it gives me a little sense of reprieve. Plus, keeping everything in garter stitch makes it very easy and a very doable project. When I get to the end of this row, it will be time to switch colors. Once again, you want to make sure whichever way you choose to switch colors to stay consistent with it. So I'm at the end. I will turn my work. And I usually will do, I'm going to set that aside. Old over new. I'm just going to pull this up just like so. Yarn management, ladies and gentlemen. There we go. Okay. And I'm ready to start again. Now, before I start this row, I am going to put some Post-its on my chart because at this point, this is where it starts to really start to make my eyes kind of jumble up a little bit if I don't have Post-it notes. So I am going to just set this down, grab my chart, and if you remember from section 1, I like to keep Post-it notes. And I block off the rows I'm not working. So I do not block off the rows I've already worked because I want to be able to see those. It helps me to know what the color of the stitches I should be working into. So that way, if it's not the right color, I know that there is a mistake at some point in the project and I can pause and take a look. I hate it when I do that where I can show just a little bit of that next row. All right, there we are. So now I can carry on knowing I'm on row 15 and work along, and I can see the color of the stitch on my needle because that's the color that will show up on the row below row 15. Okay, that's the color that's on your needle. We are placing the colors from row 15 on the needle, working into the stitches that are from row 14. Make sense? Clear as mud? All right, so I can move this out of the way and let's get started here. I have already positioned my work. Oh, do you guys ever do that where you have the hook or the needle and it's through the yarn and you're kind of like in this weird position? So I always make sure that my needle is outside of it. All right, so that way it's not like mixed in there. Okay, here we go. So I begin with a knit 1 and I jump into my pattern repeat. So I knit 1 more and then I slip 1. My yarn's in back. So I slip and I knit and I slip. And now I'm going to knit 1 2, 3, and 4. That technically is my repeat. So not this one here, but this here, that would be my repeat. That's why there's that orange square around all of those stitches. But, and then we slip this one and I can keep going. I'm not reading off what color or what I'm doing right now because I feel like you guys probably get the hang of how this works up by now. I'm not real sure. I'm just going to keep working along so that way if you happen to have any trouble and you need to see me work these, I can provide that for you. All right, looking pretty fly. All right, so I'm going to turn my work. I'm not changing colors yet because I'm at the other end. One way to know that is because you're on the wrong side of your work. The other is because the other color is down here waiting for you. It's not down here waiting for you, okay? It's not down there waiting for you. It's over here. See, there's nothing here. Okay, so once again, I can work across. And as long as I am working into the stitches of the same color and then slipping the stitches that are of the opposite color, I will be good. This becomes very rhythmic for me. I love that feeling. There we go. I'm going to turn my work and change colors. So I like to bring my yarn, my new color in front of the old. So I'll bring my gray color back over here just so it's in the right place. Da, 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 da. And I can carry on. I need to move my Post-it notes up and we can hit the next section, the next row, I should say. I'm curious how many of you are using Post-it notes. I'm going to put a poll up right here and find out how many of you have printed off the chart and are using Post-it notes along the way. I find them super helpful. I also will sometimes use Knit Companion. It's a very convenient way to keep track of where your stitches are if you are used to that program. So that's another way you could do it. I have friends who also use like highlighter washi tape, and they find that very helpful. Whatever works for you, whatever gets the job done, right? All right, so we are on our color C here, and I start off with a knit and then I slip. There's a lot of slips in this row. So I slip and I knit and I slip. It's like I'm slipping and knitting all the way down. And so this is going to be a very important row of making sure these stitches do not get too tight, okay? So we want to just keep them nice and spaced out because it could very easily become way too snug. All right. I'm going to take a second after this one and just make sure they're spaced out. Notice the ones that I'm knitting into, I don't think so. I have to make sure I'm correct here. I haven't slipped any of my color C. All of them are all knits. Yep, That's how it should be working up here. That's what it looks like in the chart too. So that's good. Everything's still nice and evened out there, which is great because it's very, very important that you do that. Okay, everybody? Let's move this along. We have to do the same thing on the back side. And we end with 2 knits. All right. All right, so first things first, we're going to set this down. Make sure nothing is pulling in too snug for you, okay? If it's already pulling in really snug on that row, I highly recommend frogging or tinking out your work and redoing that row. If you don't know how to frog or tink, I'll make sure to put a link right there. I think that's where the I button is, or right there. Wherever it is, I'll put a link to how to tink your work so that way you can do that. You can tink this row back and do it again. But you really do want to make sure that it is nice and not loose, but it's not puckering in on itself. Mine looks great, so I'm ready to turn my work. And I will go back and once again, remember, we will essentially, we're going to do the exact same thing. So we have to be very careful that we don't accidentally make those really snug. And this is going to be very much like ribbing without actually ribbing because we have to move our yarn back and forth. So we bring forward, slip, back, knit, forward, slip, back, knit. Woo, make sure you actually knit. Forward, slip, back, knit. Forward, slip, back, knit. How many of you are now repeating that to yourself? Whatever gets the job done, right? Hopefully nobody's talking to you. Your family. I don't know about you guys, but my family likes to talk to me when I'm counting stitches. And something like this would be exactly one of those times that they would start talking to me. So that way I mess up when I'm trying to be very aware of the stitches I'm doing. And I'm not going to lie, I'm really impressed with the fact that I'm talking and doing this, and I don't think I've messed up yet. What? Look at this. I'm making sure that all my stitches are still spaced out the way they need to be. You guys see that? I keep pulling it aside to make sure. And this one we end with 1 knit. Ta-da! All right, so I'm going to turn my work. Whew, kind of a stressful one. It doesn't look like it's pulling in on itself. It looks really good. I really like that. Okay, so once again, make sure that it's not pulling in on itself. This is one of those stitch patterns that it's going to want to creep in on itself if you're not very aware of those floats. So make sure you're keeping your stitches nice and spaced out and that your fabric is still nice and even along the sides. I don't want your garter stitch to be puckering out a lot more than your mosaic garter stitch. Okay, all right, so we're ready to switch colors. I have to move my section up. So I will do that right here. I'll just do it one at a time. So I'm on row 19. Let's work through this one together. Yes, I'm that person that is very aware of making sure that's nice and straight. All right, so row 19 and away we go with our color B this time. Now I'm in a good placement and I'm ready to get started. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my knit 1 and now I'm jumping into my stitch pattern. So I knit 3 and then I slip, knit, and then slip, and then I'm back to knit 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, slip, knit, 5. These rows are easy. They just cruise on by. All right, knit 5, slip, knit, slip, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, slip, knit, slip, and then knit 3. Whoops. All right, so whew, look at that. We're starting to get our lines. I really want you to be able to see the lines show up. So I'm going to keep going here. Let's work on the back side. This one isn't going to be nearly as challenging as the last one because there aren't that many slip stitches. So I just got to make sure I bring my yarn forward when I slip them and make sure my stitches are nice and spaced out. It's very easy to accidentally get too overconfident and just get lax with your spacing of your stitches. So you want to make sure that you do take a minute. Even I make mistakes, guys, and I've been knitting for many, many, many years. So you want to make sure that you do take a second and always take a look at your work and make sure everything is spaced out nicely, okay? There we go. Look at that. Look how pretty it's starting to really show up. Oh, I love that. I just love these mosaic stitches. I get so excited working them up because I feel like they're just something new each time. Even though we're using stitches that we totally know how to do, there's nothing new to that, but the look is so unique and I love it. All right, so I'm ready for the next one. I gotta move my Post-its and then we'll jump in. And there we go. So I knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, slip, knit, slip, 4, 5, slip, knit, slip, and then knit 2. Let's take a peek so far. It's looking pretty neat, right? I love the lines. I think they look really pretty. Okay, I'm going to turn my work. Just work my way back. Let's get some more yarn out of here. All right. I know you guys feel me. You know what that's like. Make sure my yarn's in the right place. And away we go. Perfect. Look how great that looks. Oh, that's so exciting. All right, it's time to change colors and move my Post-it note. Let me do that, or notes, because it is plural. My Post-it notes. All right, there's going to be more of the same here. So let's just dive in and get going. Take another look at what everything will look like. We do have quite a few of our color B stitches going in there. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we jump into the slip 1, knit 1, slip 1. And we jump into our 5. Finish that row. I'm going to turn my work. Go to the opposite side. And dive in. And that's the end of my row 24. You can see how it's really beginning to take shape. As I bring in the chart, it looks just like that. The zigzag going on here. So the step up, it's going to keep going here. And as I move my Post-it notes up, you'll notice the next row is another row, row 25. It's one of the ones we have to pay very close attention to because we're slipping every other stitch. So let me work through that row one more time. And then I'll do the following row. We'll take a look at what our work looks like. And then I'll give you the instructions for the rest of the piece. So let's go through row 25. Once again, we want to be very careful that we are keeping the stitches as we're floating along, that they are nice and smooth and relaxed through the piece. Is that the right way to say it? I don't want you guys to get confused. I don't want them loose. I just don't want them to be pulled super snug, super tight. We don't want our fabric to pucker in on itself, okay? Let me get some yarn here so I don't have this sneak up on me like it is right now. Hopefully we're good here. All right, so every other stitch and away we go. So we start off with one gray and then slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit. Again, I'm making sure these are nice and spaced out, okay? Here we are at the end of row 25. You can make sure that you don't have any mistakes by taking a look at the stitches that are on your needle. And as long as it goes color CB, 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 all the way down to the last two, and there aren't any like two B's together or two C's together, you know that that row is correct. You're ready to turn your work and work back, making sure once again that those floats are not pulled in too tight. Have I said that enough yet? Have you collected that that's very important? And here we go. Let's take a look at what we have so far. You can see that the stair steps that I was talking about are really starting to take shape here, and we have some fun stuff happening here. I just love this. I think it is so cool. This stitch pattern is very exciting to work up. And as I mentioned, there are written instructions and there is the chart. So either one you want to follow along with will work for you. When you get to the end of the chart, on the very last row, we are going to switch back to our smaller needles. So the very last, I shouldn't say the last row, the last two rows, when we switch back to color B, we will switch back to our smaller needles so that way we can once again jump into garter stitch next week with plain garter stitch at the start of the section. So make sure you do not forget to do that. If you are working along on this project with us, or heck, if you're catching on later on and you're just following along and it's like 5 or 6 years later, still share with us on social media. Use hashtag #MarleyBird or hashtag Tournament of Stitches so that way we can see your beautiful work and smash your like button. If you have questions, make sure you ask us in the Marley's Minions Facebook group during the Tournament of Stitches. We have specific threads open for each week of the tournament, so that way we are able to better address the questions concerning the section you are on. I am loving seeing all of your work so far, and keep it up. Keep up the good work, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks so much for joining me on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to hit subscribe. I've put a link right over there, or you can watch a couple of the videos I've already selected for you right down there. If you want to follow me on social media, I've put my links right over there. You could have all Marley all the time. Bye, guys.